I'm Dave and this is Logan, out once again for a walk in the countryside. Thanks for joining us. Now today we're at the town of Swanage, which is located on the eastern side of the Isle of Purbeck in Dorset. It's about 5 or 6 miles to the south of Poole and 25 miles to the east of Dorchester. And today we're going to be doing a roughly 4.5 mile circular route. We'll start and finish in the town and then head south towards Durlston Head and then back through a quite gorgeous nature reserve. And I promise you one thing today, we're going to see some quite stunning scenery and quite a few interesting things along the way. I'm filming towards the end of November. It's a little chilly, so Logan's got his coat on, as you can see. He's itching to go. The sun does look as though it's going to be out. It's quite mild, so it should be perfect for walking, so do come along with us. Well, I've parked my car at the Broad Road car park. It's only £1 to park all day between 1st of November and the 31st of March. Outside of that period it costs a lot more. I think it's between £5 and £6.40 for up to 4 hours, and if you want to stay longer it's even more. And that does tell a story, because Swanage is a very popular destination for tourists and holiday makers. So if you want to avoid the crowds, avoid the peak periods. Okay, well, before we head out into the countryside, we'll have a look through Swanage itself, because there's a lot to see. Well, there's the car park over there, and just in front of it is this rather magnificent column. It's the Prince Albert Memorial, erected in 1862 by a chap called George Burt, and we'll be coming across his name quite a bit during the course of the video. Originally it was located at the other end of town, between the High Street and Court Hill. It was taken down in 1971 by developers with a promise to move it to a new location, but it wasn't until 2021 that it was re-erected at this spot. Apparently Prince Albert, of course he was consort of Queen Victoria, did once land from the royal yacht and climb the zigzag steps to Peveril Point, and we'll be seeing that later as well. Well, with the Prince Albert Memorial to my right, just to the side of it are these quite wonderful gardens. Now this is a park. It was established in 1996. It was originally some grazing land and then a mini golf course before it became a park. And as you can see, there's an amphitheatre there where music and theatre performances are held. And those two iconic columns, they date from the 19th century, and they were formerly part of the forecourt of the Grosvenor Hotel, which was situated just to the right of here. It was demolished in 1988. Apparently the columns originally came from somewhere in London, and as we'll find out shortly, that's a bit of a theme about Swanage. Well, I've made my way to the sort of, I suppose you say, northern end of the beach to start our little tour along the promenade. And lovely to see the sun has finally come out now. So the first thing we're going to look at is just behind me here, and as you can see, it's another column. Now this one was built in 1862 by John Mowlem. He was the founder of what became the international construction firm Mowlem's, that was bought out by Carillion in 2006. Anyway, Mowlem was born in the town, retired and died here in 1868. He was again one of the town's major benefactors. His nephew was George Burt. And the column here was put up to commemorate King Alfred's defeat of the Danes in a battle here in AD 877. Well, having said that, most historians reckon that no such battle ever took place. In fact, what actually happened was that the Danish fleet, I think they were leaving Wareham and on the way to Exeter, got caught up in a major storm just out on the Peveril rocks here, and 120 ships were shipwrecked. But why spoil a good story? I'm not 100% sure what the cannonballs are doing at the top of the column either, but there you go. Okay, well, we're having a little wander along the beach now. Dogs are allowed on the beach at certain times of the year. I'll put the details up on screen. But as there's sand and there's sea, even though it's a bit chilly, I don't think you'll be having a dip today. Time for some whippet fun. Well, one thing I've noticed as we've been walking along the promenade or the quay, just down by me here there's some old, what looks like old railway track, and it, as you can see, it goes all the way along the side of the by the shore there. Now, during the busy years of quarrying, stone would be hauled from nearby quarries to the shoreline to await shipment, and stone would be put on lighters, a sort of shallow flat bottom craft, and ferried out to bigger boats in deeper water. And tall heaps of stone called bankers were deposited at various merchants' allotted areas and then loaded onto horse-drawn carts and onto the shipway. Now, originally the plan was to have a sort of railway track all the way from the quarries at Langton Matravers, which is to the west of here, all the way to Swanage and onto a pier, but local opposition put paid to that, so there was only this small bit of track along the side of the quay that was ever established, and there was no, as far as I'm aware, any engine as such. It was just carts and that was pulled by horses. I say a new pier was built in 1859 to 1860 to assist with the putting of quarried stone onto ships. We'll see the remains of that shortly. So the tramway was still used until the 1930s when it was used for transporting fish from the pier to this building here, which I believe was at some stage a fish store. Well, it really is a beautiful autumnal or late autumnal day. Now, just looking out to sea, there's one of the piers. The town had two piers at one time. The first one was built in, say, 1859 to 1860 to ease the stone loading onto lighters. It had the tramway on it. It's long since been demolished. We'll see evidence of it later on. And the second pier, which is the one that's still here today, that was built in 1896 to 97, really to facilitate a steamer service which had started in 1874. The original pier couldn't cope with the increasing traffic, and the steamer was still operating up to 1966, after which it deteriorated and it closed in 1982. It was reopened in the 1990s. I think it's now run by the Swanage Pier Trust. You have to pay to walk on it, but it does help with running costs. And apparently the diving school there is the oldest established one in the UK. We're now leaving the centre of Swanage and making our way. We're now on the southwest coastal path, which is a 630-mile long distance trail that runs from Poole in Dorset to Minehead in Somerset. We're only going to be doing a little bit of it. But from here, we've got a great view, as you can see, not only of the current pier, but also the original pier that was built mainly for the quarry industry. But the wooden pylons are still very much in place. Okay, so we're going to head on in this direction. We've got a choice when we come to these steps. You can take an easy route and head up and round towards Peveril Point, or we're going to take a slightly more trickier route. It's a little bit slippy and rocky, but there's a couple of things that are really interesting to see down there, so it's well worth being adventurous. Well, I'm sending the advance party ahead just to check to see how slippy it is. It's not too bad, but as I say, there is something really worth looking up very close up just round the corner here, and this is what we've come to see. It's the Wellington Clock Tower. Apologies for the noisy seagulls that are close by. Now, this was erected as a memorial to the Duke of Wellington at the southern end of London Bridge in 1854, but it was soon deemed to be a hazard to traffic and was dismantled in 1867. Now, our friend George Burt, he saved it and brought it here by ship and re-erected it in the grounds of one of his friends as a housewarming present, without the actual clock though. I don't know why they didn't bring the clock. So that's why there are 4 windows here where the clock used to be. And it was originally crowned with an elegant steeple, but it was replaced, or possibly when it was damaged, by a cupola in 1904. I've just noticed in front there's a little World War II pillbox, an ideal location, protecting the bay out there. Now, both John Mowlem and his nephew George Burt, who inherited the Mowlem Company, were involved obviously with the quarry industry, and they would basically load up onto ships here and to take to London, and those ships were specially designed to take heavy stone. And if they were empty coming back, they sailed quite skittishly, so they would always fill up with ballast on the homeward journey, and they would use old metal and stones from buildings that had been demolished in London. And when they brought them back, they basically re-erected them here. So that's why you see so many little bits of architectural relics that relate to London in and around the town. And even at one stage, the town was affectionately given the nickname London by the Sea. Well, I'm enjoying this little exploration. This obviously is the Lifeboat Station, and there's been a station here since 1875, but the present one was rebuilt in 2016. I think there are 2 boats housed. That's the, yeah, I can just see the smaller one in there, and then well, presumably is the launch pad for the bigger of the 2 lifeboats. Looks like something out of Thunderbirds, doesn't it? Oh yes, now I don't know if you can see in there, but that is some massive lifeboat. Okay, onwards with our journey. There's a little column there that tells us to continue along here. Well folks, this is an important part of the walk if you're going to be doing this. I know a few people do follow the walk and do it after watching the video. If I just turn the camera around, the path does sort of continue along around Peveril Point, but it's very, very rocky and quite dangerous, I think. So we're going to head up these steps here, which looks a lot safer. Well, we've now made it to Peveril Point, and from here we're starting to get some really beautiful scenes across the water. And just looking down here, you can see, I think that's where the path used to go along there. You can see why we didn't go down there. You can also see why this is called, or sometimes known as Perilous Point. Look at those rocks, and they go jutting out quite a bit underneath the sea there, and I expect many a ship has been wrecked here. And I can see the Isle of Wight in the far distance there, and just panning round Bournemouth in the very far distance, and then I can see that's Old Harry Rocks, of course, where Logan and I have been in the past. And also here on the point there's a national Coast Watcher lookout point, and then the building over there, I think that's the remains of a World War II gun battery. There's a little information board next to it that points out where all the World War II defences were, and there was quite a substantial amount of it around here, a lot of searchlight positions and gun batteries. We're halfway up our ascent, so good excuse to have a pit stop and have a look at Swanage in all its glory. And you get a good view up here. Of course, there's the beach where we were right at the start, and you see a church spire here. Well, there's a few more things in Swanage that we will see on the homeward leg, and then again this is Swanage Bay. You can just about see the pier down below, and that's Ballard Down in the far distance. Again, Logan and I did do a walk up there, our Studland Bay walk, so if you haven't seen that, do check that out. We're now heading southwards and just about to get into the Durlston Nature Reserve, a little woodland area with paths through, with some terrific coastal views on one side, and just by the rather impressive wooden entrance here. And well, I mentioned about bits of London before, didn't I? I don't know if you can see this bollard, St James Westminster written on it. Well, you never know what you're going to come across on a walk, do you? This is definitely worth investigating. Right, Logan, what are we going to do? What are we going to do here? Ready for this? You're not impressed, are you? I'll tell you what, all along this route it's peppered with these little viewpoints that look out to sea, and this one here is a typical example. It's a wonderful view, and there's a little stone that says rest and admire, and my goodness, that's certainly the case. And just look out there, isn't that beautiful? So down there is the lookout, the Coast Guard lookout point we were at right at the beginning, and then even further in the distance is Old Harry Rocks, and then beyond that is Bournemouth. And you can see how far those Peveril rocks go out into the sea, where there's the white waves. And just panning round here, I can just about make out the Isle of Wight there, the Needles. And it's amazing to think that at some stage there was a chalk ridge that ran all the way from the Needles to Old Harry Rocks. And this is our next destination, Durlston Castle. Now, it's not a real castle, but it's a folly built by, yes, you've guessed it, George Burt between 1887 and 1891. And it was purpose built as a restaurant for the Durlston estate. And Dorset County Council have owned it since 1973, at which point the country park was created, and indeed a nature reserve that we'll be passing through as well. There are car parks here for a fee, but you can walk in for free if you come from the town. and there are toilets and a cafe and displays here, and I believe dogs are allowed inside. Well, just at the base of the castle is this quite extraordinary globe that's behind me here. Isn't that fantastic? It's carved from Portland stone, and well, it's carved in the Mamolum Yard in Greenwich in London in 1887. It weighs 40 tons and is inscribed with a map of the world. It was transported here by sea in 15 segments, and it's huge, about 3 meters in diameter. And I just go around it, you can see there's some large stone plaques set around it, inscribed with various geographical and scientific data and quotes from Shakespeare and the Bible and other sources. Wow, it's incredible. And then just looking out to sea, surrounding it you've got these looks like stone benches. There's 8 of them. They're granite blocks marking the points of the compass. And then I dare say these bollards are probably from London. I tell you, this really is a quite magical setting. The sun is out and the sea's fairly blue. Days like today, you feel as though you're on top of the world. Well, slightly in front of it anyway. I tell you, that is an impressive sight, it really is. And what a beautiful spot. There's nobody here today as well. And now the sun's out, the seas, well, it's beginning to look quite blue. Not bad for this time of year anyway. And I know the sun is probably low, but there we go. So we're now going to continue along the southwest coast path. How about this, folks? Just spotted a peregrine falcon down on the cliffs below. Of course, it's their perfect habitat. They are, of course, the fastest bird in the world. I think they're the fastest animal in the world. They can reach speeds up to 200 miles an hour when they're in dive mode. Isn't that lovely there? Now, this little hut here is called Dolphin Hut because it is quite a good spot for catching sight of dolphins. So the best time to see them apparently is either April or May or October and November, and even then you've probably got a 1 in 3 chance of seeing them, but well, there are none out there today. And this is the entrance to the Tilly Wim Quarry. There is actually an information board nearby. I'll put up some photos, but yeah, Tilly is the name of a local quarryman, and Wim is a type of crane used when they loaded stone onto the barges. But so that's the entrance there. But when the castle was created here, this tunnel entrance to the quarry was actually turned into a tourist attraction as caves. It was closed in 1976 as it had become just too dangerous. And then just along the, I'm conscious that the sun is incredibly low, but yeah, there's the quarry down here there, and look, there's a, when you compare the drawing on the information board and then you look at the real thing, you can just imagine what it was like all those years ago. I tell you, there's so many interesting things on this walk. Just behind me here you've got 2 metal towers. You might be wondering what they are, and they're actually mile markers, and this is the eastern end of a measured nautical mile. There are 2 more markers a nautical mile to the west, and basically as you go by in your ship, you wait until the 2 posts are lined up and then start your stopwatch and then stop it when you pass the other 2. Another pit stop. I can't believe how beautiful the weather is. So we're nearly the end of November, mustn't complain. Just looking back here behind me, more remains of the quarry, and also just down below the sea up against the rocks. Of course, this is so typical of the Jurassic coast landscape round here. It really is quite magnificent. And let's just pan back. That's the those 2 mile markers here, and this is a valley there, and I'm going to make my way now up to Peveril Point, and just at the top there's a lighthouse to have a look at. Well, this is about as far west as we're going. You just see behind me here the lighthouse at Peveril Point. So it's quite windy up here, so hopefully the audio is going to be okay. Yeah, the lighthouse was built in 1880, 1881, and the tower there is 12 metres high, and the actual light stands about 45 metres above the high water mark. Originally it was lit by paraffin, and then the light was electrified in 1960. It's fully automated now, and I think it's actually holiday cottages. And just panning round, we're going to start heading inland now on the homeward journey back towards Swanage. We're going to go through a nature reserve, so our path I think takes us up to that ridge here. But just one final look in the very far distance. Well, I can see the 2 other metal mile markers over in the west, and that ridge in the very far distance, I'll try and take a photo, it might be a bit hazy, but that's St Aldham's Point, or St Aldham's Head should I say, and the little chapel on top, and also the Coast Guard lookout point. So we have been there before when we did our walk at Worthmer Travers. So if you haven't seen that one, do check that one out. Well, now probably at the highest point of our walk now, and we're going to say goodbye to the sea on this side, start heading inland. So we've come up an uphill path from the lighthouse, and if I just turn round, we're sort of heading in that direction back to Swanage. We're going to be following a little trail. It's a butterfly marker, wildlife trail, so that'll help us for a fair part of the way back before we get to, I think it's Townsend Road. But yeah, a rather pleasant nature reserve to wander through now. Well, it's the end of November and we can still find some blackberries. Just about. Well, we just had a really beautiful walk through the Durlston Nature Reserve, and just now going to head back into Swanage. Just to the left of me is another nature reserve. I think it's called the Townsend Nature Reserve. We're not going into that, but from up here you get some great views over Swanage in the autumnal sunshine, and there's the bay and the beach in the distance as well. Anyways, a few more things that we need to look at in the town before we draw stumps on the walk. Well, we've made our way back into the town, and this is St Mary's Church. It lies in the oldest part of the village. It was once called Swanwick, and the oldest bit of the church is the actual west tower, which dates from the 14th century. It may originally have been just a watchtower rather than ecclesiastical. You can see the slit windows there. The tower was heightened in 1620 when part of the church was rebuilt, The church was completely rebuilt, apart from the tower, in Gothic style in 1859, 1860. An enlargement took place again in 1907, 1908. I think it's got 8 bells. Well, right next to the church is this quite delightful little mill pond, which is fed by an unseen spring and bordered by a low stone wall, originally to stop cattle from polluting the water, I believe. And then there is a mill nearby. I wonder if that's the one at the bottom. There is an inscription on the side of the wall with the date 1754. And just a little bit further down, a town hall built in 1882, 1883 by George Burt, using a lot of material salvaged from demolition work in London. Indeed, the front facade was rescued from London's 17th century Mercer's Hall in Cheapside. And the clock, well, that dates to 1826, I think it is, and it too was salvaged, possibly from the Church of St Mary, Somerset, in Upper Thames Street in London, which in turn had been demolished in 1872. And the lampposts in the front there, yeah, they're from London. And finally, the last thing that we're going to look at today, just behind the town hall, is this little lock-up, the House of Confinement. It was also called the Blind House, as it only had one tiny window. It originally stood beside the church before it was moved here. And look at that lovely old pump next to it. And again, I guess this must be a London lamppost. And indeed, just if I have a look here again, these bollards, yeah, City of London written on them. Well folks, we've come to the end of our walk. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up and a like, and do leave a comment. We've had a really great walk today, and what better way to end by the seaside with some sausage and chips. Keeping them away from the seagulls, I think. So until we meet again, thanks for watching, and cheerio. Right, sir. Chip for you. And a sausage.